On the 14th of April, 1887, a notice went up on the posting board outside the feed store in Miles City, Montana. Spring calving. 2 weeks. Pay in cattle, not coin. Bring your own bedroll. 3 days, not more. A cowgirl in need of work read it twice. Her name was Geneva Whitlock. She had 19 cents and a borrowed coat, and no reason to believe the man who wrote it was offering a kindness. What happened on the 3rd day, the territory would later hear about. What happened in the 8 winters after, almost no one believed. Hello, friend. Pull up close to the fire if you have one. Tonight's story sits in the high country of Montana, in a stretch of spring thaw that smelled of wet pine and old mud. It begins, the way a lot of stubborn things begin, with a man who meant exactly what he said. The road in was a 1/4 mile of frozen ruts, and the corrals were empty except for a sway-backed gelding dozing in the early sun. A dog came out to meet her, looked her over, and went back to the porch. The ranch belonged to a widower named Ezra Colburn, 61 years old, hollow-cheeked, with a jaw like a fence post. His voice had not softened since the year his wife was buried. He stood on the porch of the long house when Geneva rode in, and he did not step down. He looked at her the way a man looks at a horse he has not yet decided to buy. She swung down. She held out her hand. He did not take it. "You are the one," he said, not a question. "3 days," she said. "I read the card." "Then we understand each other." She nodded. She did not smile. He seemed to find this acceptable. The first morning, before the sun cleared the timber, he walked her to the calving shed. He told her which heifers were close, which were not, which had lost their calves the year before and would need patience. The first heifer was already walking the fence line before dawn. Geneva read her the way a person reads a letter she has opened before, by the head, by the bag. She got her into the shed without a fight. The calf came at 11, a heifer calf, black and white, already trying to stand. By noon, it was dry. By nightfall, 3 more were on the ground. Ezra sat on the fence rail and watched. He said nothing. She said nothing. The line cabin had a cot, a lantern, and a wool blanket that smelled of cedar. She slept the way tired people sleep, which is to say, completely. The second day, she mended the south fence. The wire had come loose in the March wind, and 3 of the yearlings had been pushing through into the lower pasture. She found the break, cut a new length of wire, set the staples with the flat of her palm. Ezra watched her do it from the barn doorway. He asked her where she had learned. She said her father had been a farrier in Wyoming. He said, That was the longest sentence he had spoken to her since the porch. The 3rd day began with a heifer in trouble. The calf was backward, and Geneva was on her knees in the straw at 5 in the morning, sleeves to the elbow. It was the kind of work that does not care who is watching. By 10, the calf was breathing. By 2 in the afternoon, another. By dusk, 9 live calves stood in the shed, all on their feet, all nursing. The foreman was a man named Micah. He had worked the place 11 years and never learned more than his own name on paper. He had been watching her set the splint on a heifer's broken hoof. She showed him how to read the brand book while he held the lantern. He spelled out the letters one at a time, moving his lips. She said each one back to him, patient as a fence post. By the end of the evening, Micah could sign his own name in the dust, with one eye on the doorway in case someone came to tell him to stop. No one did. Ezra was at the kitchen table, mending a halter, and did not look up. Ezra stood in the doorway when the work was done. He had a cup of coffee in his hand. He had made two. He held the second one out to her. She took it. He looked at the shed, the 9 calves, the foreman still tracing letters in the dust with his finger. 3 days, he said. 3 days, she said. He did not say she should leave. He did not say she should stay. He turned and walked back to the long house. The next morning, her bedroll was still in the line cabin. Nobody moved it. Nobody asked. The first winter came down in October, hard and early, the way Montana winters come when they mean it. Geneva moved her bedroll from the line cabin to the spare room in the long house. Not because anyone asked her to, but because the chimney cracked one night in a hard wind. She did not have the materials to fix it. She left her things folded on the floor by the window, the borrowed coat on the hook. Nobody moved them. Nobody asked. The second spring, the preacher's wife from town came out to the ranch on a borrowed buggy. She had heard, she said with a small, careful smile, that Ezra had taken on a young woman for the calving season. She asked Geneva a number of questions about her family, her church-going, her intentions, the kind of questions that have only one answer they are willing to hear. Geneva answered them with the same patience she used on the yearling heifers in the squeeze chute. The preacher's wife left before sundown. She did not come back. In June, a traveling hardware salesman came through the gate with a wagon of barbed wire and a proposal. He offered her twice Ezra's pay to manage a spread over in the Bighorn, where the grass was better, and the owner was a widow who needed a steady hand. She thanked him. She said she was spoken for. She went back to mending the north fence and did not let herself think too closely about the way the words had come out. By the third winter, Micah could read a letter without moving his lips. By the fourth, he could read a cattle manifest and a deed. By the fifth, he was keeping the brand book in order, with the new calves cataloged by date and dam, and Geneva had not had to check his work once. Ezra watched this happen the way he watched most things. From a distance, his face gave away nothing. His hand occasionally passed a man a cup of coffee at the end of a long day without being asked. He never said he was proud of either of them. He did not need to. The coffee came warm and it came on time. The years went by the way years go on a working ranch. They did not announce themselves. A heifer died in a hard January, the kind of cold that finds the calves no matter what you do. A colt was born on a warm April morning and stood up in 11 minutes. It was the kind of small, ordinary miracle a person notices when she has stopped looking for the larger ones. The roof of the line cabin was re-shingled. The south fence, which had a way of coming loose in the spring wind, was mended 4 times in 5 years. Then, with a heavier gauge of wire Geneva bought out of her own pay, it stopped coming loose at all. In the 6th winter, Ezra started coughing. He said it was the dust from the hay. He said it was the cold. He said it was nothing a man of his years had not earned. Geneva did not argue with him. She shortened his rides. She moved his coffee closer to the stove. She did not mention what she had begun to suspect, because a man like Ezra Colburn could not be told what he was. He had to be allowed to be it. She let him be the man who mounted his own horse, even when the man she saw in the morning was a man who ought to have stayed by the fire. In the 7th winter, he gave up the horse. He said the horse was too slow. The horse was not too slow. In the 8th, he gave up the porch. He sat by the window instead, watching the cattle move across the lower pasture in the long gold light of late afternoon. He asked Micah, who could read every brand in the book, to bring him the coffee in the morning instead of the other way around. Micah did. He had never said thank you. He had never needed to. He set the cup on the sill at 6, the way he had set it on the porch rail for 30 years, and went out to do the work. And if you are the kind of person who has stayed past the day you meant to, you know what that cup on the sill at 6 in the morning was really for. Geneva did the work. She did not talk about doing the work. She did not count the years. She counted the calves. She counted the fence posts. She counted the cups of coffee carried up the stairs in the dark. The 8th winter ended on a Tuesday, the way most hard things end, without announcement. Micah came down from the long house at 5 in the morning and stood in the yard for a long time without going back inside. He had not lit a lamp. He did not need to. Geneva woke from the sound of him not moving. She went to the window. She saw him standing there, with his hands in his pockets and his face to the east, and she understood before he opened his mouth. She went up the stairs. She closed his eyes. She folded his hands over the quilt. She sat with him for an hour. He had given her 8 winters, a roof, and a cup of coffee at the end of every long day. He deserved that much before the work of leaving him began. The lawyer came out from Miles City on the Friday stage. He was a small, neat man with a bow tie and a leather case. He set the case on the kitchen table and asked who, in the household, was the person named in the will. Micah looked at Geneva. Geneva looked at Micah. "I am the executor, I suppose," Micah said. "I have been foreman here 11 years, 20 by the count of winters." "I am asking," the lawyer said, with the careful patience of a man who has driven a long way and would like to be answered. "For the person named in the will." There was only one person in the room. Geneva read the will that night, by lamplight, with the brand book open on the table in front of her, in case she needed something to put her hands on. The ranch was in her name. The cattle were in her name. The line cabin, the long house, the south fence that no longer came loose in the spring wind, the north fence she had mended in June of her first summer, the porch where Ezra Colburn had stood the day she arrived and told her she had 3 days, not more. All of it in her name. The will did not mention charity. It did not mention gratitude. It did not mention the 9 calves, or the broken hoof, or the foreman she had taught to read his own name out loud. It was written in Ezra's own hand, in the same plain, careful script he used for the brand book and the manifests every fall. A single line, the one who stayed. She set the paper down on the brand book, the way a person sets down a thing she is not yet sure she is allowed to hold. She read the line once more, and then a third time. She went to the window. The lower pasture was silver in the last of the moon. She did not cry. She had not been a person who cried since a long time before she came to this ranch. She stood there for a long time, with her hand on the frame. She let the line do its work, the way a fence post does, the way a coffee cup on a sill at 6 in the morning does. The lawyer drove back to Miles City on the Saturday stage. Micah went out to the barn and began the morning feeding, the way he had begun the morning feeding for 20 winters. He did not ask her what she would do. He did not need to. The man who had left her the ranch had not asked her either. He had left the question, the way he had left most of the things he cared about, in her hands. I wonder, the way I think you wonder too, what a man means when he writes a line like that. Whether he means thank you, whether he means I saw you, whether he means in the end that the only inheritance worth giving a person is the proof that she was there and the rooms she earned by staying in them. If you have ever stayed past the day you meant to, you know what that line cost a quiet man to write. And you know, the way she did, that some doors do not close. They just stop being asked about. Thank you, friend, for sitting with this one. If the story found you, leave me a note in the comments. Tell me about a person who stayed. Subscribe if you want more frontier tales like this one, and ring the bell so you do not miss the next ride. I will see you on the next trail.